Good morning, everybody, here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're doing great this morning. We're not having any trouble whatsoever.
We haven't even been kind to one another. It's awful early to be as mean-spirited as we have to one another, but it's a trap game kind of Thursday, so we might as well get that trap game right.
That voice you hear is Old DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. We're live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN.
I'm like, hey, what's up? Hello.
Tri-Cities, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Good show for you here this morning.
It's all relative.
Well, good show or bad show? We have a good show planned. Whether it ends up being a good show or not remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But we will, obviously, there's a lot going on in terms of sports news. But let me tell you about our guests real quick. We're going to talk to Mitch Sherman of the Athletic at 8 a.m. At 8:30, we're going to talk to Coach Laura Kuhn of the Omaha Supernovas. We're at 8:45. We're going to talk to our Vegas insider, Brian Edwards. And then at 9, we're going to talk to Michael Bruntz as Nebraska baseball gets underway this weekend. And, of course, we'll wrap up the show with a little Hurrdat hot seat, because I think that might be the only time we actually get to the Super Bowl questions that I've been trying to ask all week.
Do you have a lot of Super Bowl questions? I feel like you've been telling me this since Monday.
I do. We just haven't got to them yet. Yeah. We'll get to them. It'll be good.
Baby steps, man. Baby steps.
But coming up in this first hour, obviously, we're going to get to the Coach Mack situation, which appears very fluid now with Chris Holtmann being asked to leave Ohio State, being told to leave Ohio State. So obviously that has some possible ramifications for Creighton and Coach Mack. Obviously there is a lot going on with the shooting at the Kansas City Victory Parade yesterday. We'll touch on that as well here in the first hour. But I do want to start with Coach Mack here, because
it's near and dear to your heart.
It is near and dear to my heart. And I also think people maybe are not appreciating how real of a possibility this might be. Because obviously he had the overtures from Ohio State back in 2017, right? His resume has only gotten better since then. He's gotten a Sweet 16. He's gotten an Elite 8. He's proved.
Yeah.
Right? Like his resume.
Who knows what would have happened if Notre Dame came knocking just a little later on in the season as opposed to in the middle of a run. There was a lot.
Yes. Right? Like Ohio State came knocking in 2017. Notre Dame came knocking last year. And those were things that we knew about. There was some others along the way that didn't get as serious. The Ohio State one last time.
Are you serious?
The Ohio State one last time was serious.
Yeah.
Because they held a press conference to say he was not going to Ohio State. If there were ever a press conference to address a rumor, it's not a rumor, it's real. Okay?
Yeah.
Like that's how you know it has crossed over from rumor to reality. And so I think Creighton has some work to do here to feel good about Coach Mack's day.
Isn't it ironic too, for the last today's Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So for 4 days, so since you and I have been chit-chatting as, cohorts.
Yeah.
Ohio State has come up every day as a basketball job.
Which is weird.
Right?
Not something that was in the notes, except today.
But I'm sure people were like, why? Like, what is going on with the Ohio State and realistic expectations? And
it's an interesting kind of case study, though, right?
It really is,
because a school with that much money, football. I mean, it's kind of similar to the Alabama basketball job, right? Because you have a ton of money, you have unlimited resources because of the football success. But how much do people actually care about the basketball success? That's the $1 million question, or in this case, the $12.8 million question to have Chris Holtmann seen out the door.
Isn't it always interesting? And nice little situation Ted Carter walks into.
Yeah.
But anyway, I always think it's important to figure out. I can't remember who told me this. Maybe it was the amazing Daniel. It was somebody who gave clarity after all these years, which was maybe a year ago too. So at like 48 and a half years of age, I realized if you're going to have conversations about whether something is something or not, know the frame of reference in which you're arguing it from.
Okay.
Right. So
what does that mean in this context?
It means when we're talking about value and level of a job, Like, has anybody ever said what kind of job it's supposed to be? Because you wouldn't be arguing from a vantage point of if it's this job or if it's that job, if the expectation level was ever set on what kind of job it is.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
People thinks it's like when you his analogy was, if you're talking about like the greatest of all time, like what are the parameters that we're talking about?
Sure, absolutely.
So
are we talking about?
So we're talking about So if we're talking about what kind of job this is, what kind of parameters are we talking about? Is this relative to the conference? Is this relative to the national landscape? Is this relative to the money that they spend? Because I think a few of those are different conversations. But until people get on the same page,
then you can't really have that.
You can't really have that conversation.
That's fair. So let me set out some parameters of what I think Ohio State is, or what I think when I'm talking about a good job. Right. First and foremost, the first parameter that I think is what level can you achieve in terms of winning here. Okay. Now that is a very broad umbrella. That includes a lot of these other parameters in it.
I suppose you could check history.
Yeah, history is one of them, right? But I also think, Creighton's a good example of this. Their history probably does not indicate their future ceiling because you change conferences. You kind of have a different emphasis on basketball now. You're in the Big East as opposed to Missouri Valley. Like there's differences there. And I also so I think and Butler's a good example of this too. I don't look at Butler and say, hey, you made 2 national title games, you can win a national title. Yeah. I don't look at Butler as a place I go, yep, that's a place you can win a national title, even though they've gotten within about an inch of doing it, right? So when I ask that question, part of it is historical, right? You go to Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, this is a place where national titles are expected, right? Ohio State, I think you can win a national title there. I don't know if that's the expectation, but you've got the ceiling to do it. So that's the first and foremost in terms of laying out parameters of what makes it theoretically a good job. What goes into that for me, A, is resources. What resources do they have available for you? Ohio State, basically unlimited resources. Is that fair?
Fair.
Ability to recruit there at a high level. I think you can bring in whoever you want to, whoever you can are good enough to get.
100%.
Being at Ohio State doesn't prevent them from going there, right? Creighton, there's some high-end guys that being at Creighton probably prevents you from getting. You're not getting the 5-star guys, right? At least not yet. The other thing that I think matters here, and this is where Ohio State falls short, is how much does that program mean to people there? Because as much as they care about Ohio State football, we've seen Ohio State basketball not exactly top of their concern list.
Okay, so let me just give some just frame of reference. So how many conference regular season championships do you think Ohio State has since I've been in high school? Since 1990. Regular season conference championships. I'm not counting ones that have been vacated.
Probably. So you're not counting those?
No.
Okay.
So roughly 35 years.
I would guess 4.
9.
Okay, that's more.
Okay. What about postseason conference championships?
I'm going to guess less than 9.
They didn't get any in the 90s.
Yeah, but they did pretty good.
They went on a little run.
I'm going to say 5.
Very good. So to the last 30 years, so a third of the time for regular season champions, roughly, in the last 35 years.
Which is pretty good.
That's actually better than I would have thought.
Way better than I thought, honestly.
And then conference tournament champions 5 times since 2000,
which is really good.
Is that surprising?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by the tournament championships. I was surprised by the regular season championships since 90. That's double what I thought.
Yeah, since 2002 they've got 5.
Yeah.
Now you got 3 in a bunch, right? I think 10, 11, and 13.
Yeah, actually had the Evan Turner was in there, and you had some.
But you've had some fellas that you've recruited too.
Yeah, they've gotten good guys.
So do you know where I'm going with? There's always a method to my madness. Why I set this up, right? See, the disconnect for this job and its perception is between the actual job and the fan base.
Yeah,
because even on Monday when this came up on a humbug, and then again on Tuesday we had Steve Marinas, and it's like, man, what's wrong with this Ohio State deal? you guys, we always brought it back to the fan base.
Mhm.
But what do the fans expect? I'm not how realistic is it to even be able to get a gauge on that?
Yeah, no, it's not easy.
It's pretty fluid.
It's not easy. It is pretty fluid. I basically judge it by how many people show up when they're not good, or when they're not like.
Oh, that's
really
hard,
good.
especially
It is,
and in the last 20 years.
but
that's really hard.
I also have I'll admit I have a skewed view of that because of where we are.
Right, like
Nebraska,
we give you a false sense of security. We show up for losing sports.
Yeah, Nebraska football shows up no matter how it's going. Nebraska basketball has shown up no matter how it's going.
Like I mean, that's clearly the strength of.
Yes,
that's clearly the strength of the
state.
It's
the outlier, but I also understand that it's a real thing, right? There's other programs that do that. There's other programs that still show up when they're not good.
Like Georgetown?
Not Georgetown.
I just asked the questions.
Listen, I know. But
like Michigan?
You asked me the same question last year, Eric.
Well, I mean, I think Michigan and Ohio State are actually very similar.
Michigan's not showing up for basketball.
No, but I think they're actually very similar jobs, Ohio State and Michigan basketball, despite the fact that Michigan's had more success. Because of what we talked about there, Michigan will show up for football no matter what, right? Ohio State will show up for football no matter what. That's not the same for basketball. They still have the same resources. They still have, I mean, those are very similar basketball jobs, in my opinion.
I understand.
And that to me is why they'll always be second-tier basketball jobs.
Because I think these kinds of conversations are important. Because if you're going to look at it from Coach Mack's vantage point, what are his clear strengths that we have been able to tangibly see since he's been at Creighton? I think two are undeniable.
Okay.
His ability to connect with the fan base. He is very good at being authentic when it comes to his relationship with the fan base and the media. I think we feel like we know Coach Mack.
Fair. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is development.
Development's been incredible.
Guys get better under his watch.
Almost always.
Now there's some sneaky ones.
Yeah.
You know, where you could say, golly, he's turned out to be a probably better recruiter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than we
better
thought.
Recruiter than we thought he was going to be. Much better at filling his coaching staff.
How about I was just going to say his ability to hire.
Because there's always, like a guy leaves. Like I was a big Steve Lutz guy.
Yeah.
Right. He leaves. You bring a guy in. You're like, oh, he's actually pretty good. Al Huss leaves.
Yeah.
I was like, and I didn't really know that much about Al Huss when he got here.
His ability to fill out his staff is
it's been really
sneaky impressive.
And then haven't even gotten to his X's and O's acumen, right? Like, which is, I think people, rightly consider him one of the best offensive minds 100%. In the game.
So there we go.
So there's a lot of things to like about Coach Mack if you're Ohio State, and I think it matches up with some of the things you would maybe be concerned about if you're Ohio State. Also,
you see, I set the table.
Look at that. You kind of like, hey, I'm going to put the plates.
And
out.
I don't want people to. I'm not trying to tell you how to think.
No,
I'm just going to lay. We're just going to lay it out there. And you can do with it what you will when you want. Because I'm surprised at Columbus's response so far.
That they're not thrilled.
Yeah, you should be elated.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should be elated.
Coach
to
Mack
even
is absolutely the most proven guy you have a shot at.
100%.
Now you might take a flyer on somebody that's like young and upcoming and ends up being really, really good. But as far as proven commodities, Mack is the best thing you are going to have an access to. Now,
like I'm taking Mack over Nate Oates.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think here's the thing about Ohio State, though, that I think the football fan that watches basketball when football season's over.
I tried to get you to nip this in the bud since Monday.
But here
comes. Go ahead.
It's a real thing.
Go ahead.
It's a real thing.
Okay.
I think those
just because it is doesn't mean it should be.
No, I don't think it should be.
Okay.
But that is a large section of the Ohio State basketball fan base.
Yeah.
And those people are used to Ohio State football recruiting at a super high level. Mm-hmm. I think they look at Nate Oates and who he's been able to bring to Alabama, and they like it more than what they look at in terms of the recruiting rankings of what Greg McDermott's been able to bring to Creighton. Now, I think Greg McDermott's done a better job of identifying talent, identifying fit within the system, and then developing it within that system than Nate Oates has. But Nate Oates has gotten, he had number 3 pick in the draft last year. Creighton didn't have that. Nate Oates, he brings 5 stars in. He brings this guy in. That, to me, I think Ohio State fans, and to be fair, I think it's not exclusive to Ohio State.
No.
They get blinded by the stars.
But do you know one of the things that I appreciate about Nebraska's fan base?
What's that?
Is they've been able to distinguish, even though there is some crossover.
Mm-hmm.
They've been able to distinguish football from basketball. Now, they both haven't had a ton of success lately.
Yeah.
But the ability to look at recruiting and the profile differently,
sure,
I think is an absolute strength. And I'm not DB here to pump up Nebraska's fan base. I'm just simply telling you, like, there's some inherent truths that I bore out that I think allow these programs to stay afloat with their fan base. And a lot of it is recognizing who and what we are.
Sure.
Which is what this exercise is all about.
Absolutely. I will say, I think the Nebraska, at least now, the Nebraska recruiting profile for football and basketball is closer than it is for Ohio State.
I still think we've only cared about development.
In what sense?
Football.
Sure.
I think that has always been first and foremost, which has kept recruiting at bay. You have about 12 to 15% of the fan base that is now back into or still into stars.
Sure.
Need more talent.
Yeah.
Need more talent. Need more talent.
Well, the thought is, right, if you can develop the 3-star, then if you can develop a 5-star in that same way, then that guy's better, right? You don't always take into effect, well, maybe the 5-star is closer to a ceiling already. Maybe, there's other things going on.
Yeah,
there,
it's
right?
like it's like Mac with like, let's say, Baylor Sherman. Just take a look at development.
Yeah.
Right. If you're trying to choose a program,
Baylor's better this year than he was last year.
And
he was already really
and when
good
when he had to pick a school.
Yeah.
Let's just look at development.
He went to Creighton.
Right. Let's just look at development. I know there's a couple of these aforementioned schools in the SEC that are courting you. One in particular. Let's just look at development, though.
Yeah.
Right. So
you don't go to John Calipari to get developed.
Well, that job may come open here pretty soon.
It may. It certainly may. But you know what I mean? Like,
they did finally get off the schneid, though. They got the win the other night at home. I think they'd lost 3 in a row, right?
I think that's right. John Calipari is the bigger, sexier name, right? Or at least at some point was.
Yeah. But
you don't go to John Calipari to get developed. You go to John Calipari if you're out of high school and you want to be in the NBA in like 18 months.
So the funny thing is there's all these undertones and all this talk. Man, how'd we get here? And Marcus Blossom and the father. Yeah. Right. And I go back to what we talked about on Monday. And I said, this goes for players. It goes for coaches. It goes for people in relationships. What do you mean? Where am I going?
You want to go somewhere you're celebrated, not tolerated.
Go where you're celebrated and not tolerated. And listen, I'm not here professing that I know Mac better than anybody else or whatever, right? He's not hitting me up. We're not doing pillow talk, right? We exchange congratulatory texts. I can say I appreciate you. A couple times I can call and say, hey, need a little advice, but he's not telling me his plans, right?
Yeah, sure.
But you could just tell, right? Like there's so many little crumbs that have been left, whether it's contract extensions, negotiations. And listen, it's a private institution, so we don't really know.
Yeah.
What
they didn't give us a lot. They said longer than 2, less than 10, I think was the line.
And that's fine, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
they don't have
to each his 100%. But we got here for a reason.
But let me ask you this, okay? Because I think this is an important distinction. Obviously, Coach Mack and Rasmussen and Bruce Rasmussen were super tight.
Had an amazing,
very, very close.
As he did with the majority of his coaches.
He did. That was his strong suit, right? Relationship building.
I would hate to have to get Coach Booth on the phone.
Okay. Relationship building with those coaches, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Is it possible that because he doesn't have, and it would be impossible to have that with somebody coming in new, right? I mean, at least right away. Not saying it's impossible to build that, but let's say that things aren't actually, tense between him and Marcus Blossom or whatever. But is it possible that just not having that tight of a relationship makes it feel like you're less celebrated?
Maybe.
Like, does feeling less celebrated at some point make you feel only tolerated when that's really not the vibe they're giving off?
And I need to be clear on the celebratory thing, because it's not folks fawning on you. It's just simply whether you have their best interest.
They've got
at
your
heart.
back. They've got your best interest at heart.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to. It doesn't have to be rainbows and butterflies, and I don't have to have coffee ready for you. But hey, man, like, I do acknowledge
At the end of the day,
and you are appreciated. You
Yeah.
are valued. That's just leadership 101.
sure.
And whether this turns out over time to be an indictment of Blossom or not, I don't know. It's unfair to kind of broach it from that vantage point.
Yeah.
All I know for sure
Is it unfair, though?
you don't get here for no reason.
Sure. No, I get that.
That you know what I mean? Like,
And even if it, but here's the thing. Even if it does end up being an indictment on Blossom, that doesn't mean he's bad at his job. It doesn't mean he didn't get here for the right reasons. What it might mean is he was never able to overcome not being Raz.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a possibility. That's what's happening here, right? Is that fair? That Marcus Blossom's biggest sin is that he is not Bruce Rasmussen.
maybe.
It's possible. I'm
It
not
is.
saying that is.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. It's sure.
And
Is it plausible? Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's certainly, whatever else is going on, I do think it's certainly part of it, right? There might be other things that he does that people don't like or whatever. And really, I don't know. I'm not playing dumb here. You hear things, but I really don't know. But I do think whatever the rest of it is, part of it is that he is not Bruce Rasmussen. And there's nothing he can do about that, which really isn't fair to him. The rest of it maybe is or isn't. But the fact that seems to be being held accountable for not being Raz is really not fair. Now, it may not matter.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm listening.
Well, think about that over the
I'm
break.
listening. Because, I mean, Raz is there at every
He's
game,
there a
right?
lot.
You can see him. He
Yeah.
can handshake and says what's up. And
He's there. He's around.
and Mac's pretty far along in his career where I don't know if he needs to have doesn't have to be the exact same, but is it such a stark contrast where you got to find something else different to do?
We'll have more on this Coach Matt conversation, as well as we'll get some coverage on the Kansas City Parade coming up next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can join us there at any time. You can also join us on the show on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. That's 888-638-4876.
I know when the hotline blings.
I'm just going to keep stalling until...
No, I can hear you.
Yeah, but you can't talk.
No, sure I can. No, I got you.
All right.
I know when the cadence slows down, you're buying yourself time.
That's true.
I got it.
That's from when I would host shows solo,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, okay, I need to be a little more deliberate here.
I need to buy myself time.
A little
Why my
bit
partner appears to be
of
collecting
time.
info.
No, but
Did we set the show already?
we did, yeah. We set it right off the top. I was very proud of
With
myself.
Bruntsy and the Bagman and Mitchell.
Got to it right away.
Yeah,
We got.
I
Mitch.
know.
What's that?
I thought that was impressive. You actually did it in the first 180 seconds.
I did. It
which
was-
I thought was.
Right off the bat.
I'm like, huh, that's interesting. might be turning over a new leaf.
Well, because if I don't do it right away, we will get into something that I won't get it done until like 30 minutes later.
Yeah.
That's so.
Hey, so I got to go back to something you're talking about with, we got into the celebrated, not tolerated thing and the chain of command. So, like, let's say, what's a good analogy? So if you do in fact feel
Mhm.
that this came about from some sort of
Tension.
yeah, where do you start? At a school over on the hill where
Mhm.
clearly basketball is your bell cow.
Yep.
How'd we get here? Is it a top to bottom thing? Is it an athletic department thing? Because when you said, well, maybe he's just simply not Raz, I can't necessarily vibe with that.
Sure.
Because for as great and I'm obviously I'm Team Raz,
Sure.
right?
I don't know anybody who's not.
There still has to be like this common vision for Raz to have been able to say, okay, here's our vision, here's our plan, go out and do your thing.
And you're saying that comes from above Raz's head.
It has to, doesn't it?
Well, we talked about this. We brought up Ted Carter because he's at Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
We brought this up kind of when.
And knowing Ted Carter, I would guess
he's making that higher.
100%.
Yeah. Well,
100%.
We talked about this when Coach Rule got brought in last year, right?
Yeah. Coach Rule doesn't talk about Ted Carter as much as he did without.
Yes.
Ted Carter being very heavy-handed.
Yeah.
And Ted Carter at that time having such a very, 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 very good relationship.
Yeah. I think when you look at the alignment that Coach Rule talked about all the time when he was brought in, the vision that's cast by
speaking my language,
Admiral Carter and then Trev Alberts and then on down to him. That when you said, okay, what about the leadership above Raz? That's the first thing I thought of was, okay, Nebraska football. Yeah, okay. You look at the coaches, you look at the issues.
I talk about it all the time because it's important.
Yes, but you look at all the things that have gone wrong, right? And you can make an argument that it starts with not being
because it was disjointed.
Down,
it was disjointed,
right?
100%.
So that being said, if I don't necessarily think it's Marcus Blossom's fault, and I don't necessarily know, right? I don't know the inner workings of the athletic department. It could go either way. But I think some of the narrative about that's probably a little overblown. But there is obviously some issues somewhere in that chain of command because we are at a place where this is an actual conversation.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, it was an actual conversation in 2017 when Raz was here as well. So it's not exclusive to the fact that, Mac must be unhappy. But if the leadership that was in place in 2017 was still in place today, my level of concern about Coach Mac leaving would be dramatically lower.
Understood.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not saying it's zero, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Because I think...
Because he knew that those guys were for him. They were riding for Coach Mac.
Yeah.
Right? So it's easier to say, no, I'm going to stay here where I know where I stand.
I just wish I could have been a fly on the wall during COVID and the whole locker room comments with the plantation, and because I think in a situation like that where tensions are high and everybody's is bothered by everything that's said, I want to know, because in situations like that, just my experience tells me the more closely you are aligned as an infrastructure, the more water you can take on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just seemed to be disjointed from that moment on about how much water they could actually take on.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think so.
That seems to be like when this wasn't really like a believable thing until then. And now anytime it comes up, I absolutely believe that where there's smoke, there's fire.
So the outlier there is the last time Ohio State came up, because that was believable at the time, even pre everything else we've talked about, right? So that's where I hesitate a little bit, because I genuinely think and her name is it Sydney, the youngest daughter? If she wasn't still in high school in 2017,
doing the darn thing at Scott, I
think that maybe he goes.
I don't, but I see, but I don't. You can't knock that though.
No, I'm not knocking it at all.
Right? Like,
but what I'm saying is,
so I don't think that's remotely in the same comp if you want to use a comparison, because and look, remember who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Whether you take a job or not that is presented to you that has to do with family is different.
No, I know.
Than whether you like your work environment or not.
100%.
Like, they're not the same thing.
No, I understand. But what I'm saying is that even with everything in place the way he would have wanted it, like with Raz and the president at the time, whose, again, name is escaping me.
Why do I always want to say Mulcahy? Is that MASH?
Yes, it is. I'm pretty sure. I was actually a big MASH guy growing up.
You're weird.
Me and my mom used to watch MASH all together.
She's
all the
cool,
time.
so I'll give her grace.
But even with everything the way Coach Mack wanted it, right? Pre-plantation comments, pre-COVID, brass is still there. It was still a very real possibility that he could have gone to Ohio State. And if his family situation had been just a little different, he probably does.
I mean, maybe.
I'm just saying that was the reason he gave.
Maybe.
The reason he gave was
lots of stories, right?
Right.
Contract, no contract.
Sure.
Like there's offer, no offer, posturing, no posturing. I don't know for sure. I'm just saying. And remember,
do you think that's part of it? Because everything got done
6 years ago. Doug's in a different position in the NBA too. So there's the gentle tug of, where's my son? Is what's going on there? That relationship, he hadn't been gone for very long. Sydney's doing her thing. Like the family dynamics, in my opinion, is a different conversation.
We can leave that alone.
Than leadership infrastructure. That's just my opinion.
No,
I'm not saying you got to ride with that. I'm saying I think
it's a different conversation. I agree.
Because one is significantly much more powerful.
But
in my opinion.
No, that I agree. That's what I'm saying. I think that the family dynamic was so powerful that I can
put up with not liking my boss a lot longer
if your family's happy.
If my family's happy.
No, I get that.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, even at the time when he liked his boss, I think if it weren't for the fact that his family wouldn't have been happy, he would have gone. That's my point, is how powerful that family was for him.
If Bo Pelini likes his boss, he probably could endure what was going on with Mary Pat and his son.
Yeah.
A little easier.
Absolutely.
Right? You just can't have both of those dynamics.
For sure. 100%.
But I will say this. If the family's shaky, all bets are off. It doesn't matter how kosher.
Or if now you're like an empty nester, basically, right? All the kids are in college or beyond for Coach Mack. Like that, I think matters too, because you feel less of an obligation. It's different to move when your kid's in high school than moving when your kid's in college. Like it's a different dynamic, right?
Yeah, so it is.
I think that's a big factor. Michigan Lance, Kim, stay on the line here. We will take your calls coming up next. Also want to touch on the Kansas City Parade shooting as well. We'll do that as we wrap up hour number one. But stay on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, guys. We will get to you as soon as we come back. Didn't want to put you up against the hard out here. That's DB. I'm Ravi. This is Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube via the video stream. Make sure you check that out. DB is there. He's waving to you.
Hello.
He's putting on the headset, ready to roll again.
Not yet.
I'm Ravi Lulla.
I see we have a couple of callers.
We do. Before we get to our callers, though, I gotta put out a little call to action to our friends, because we've talked a little Creighton this morning. We've talked a very little, just touched on Nebraska a little bit, but you know who we haven't brought up yet? Who plays tonight? The Omaha Mavericks, who have Omaha native Frankie Fiddler, who is in the top 20 in NCAA Division I scoring and is leading the Mavericks, Omaha Mavericks men's basketball team, in a run for the conference title. The Mavericks are at home tonight against South Dakota, and then Saturday, February 17th, against South Dakota State. Do not miss these epic matchups. Get your tickets now by calling the box office 402-554-MAVS or going to omavs.com/ticks. Let's pack the Baxter. And as we've talked about before, Frankie Fiddler, walking bucket.
Go get him then.
We love our guy Frankie Fiddler. We should try and get him on. We should talk to Frankie
anytime.
Let's talk to Frankie next week.
Okay.
Right now we're going to talk to a couple friends on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Let's go Kim first, because we were talking a little Creighton, and Kim might have some Creighton thoughts as well. Kim, what's going on?
Gentlemen, why would you make me wake up to this?
Oh,
we also need to have a discussion. When I went to go find your phone number, do you want me to tell you what I have listed as your contact?
What's that? This ought to be good.
It says Hurrdat Hail Coffee Ravi.
Hey, whatever the memory devices are, right? There's been people whose
Yeah.
number that I've tried to like quick search in my phone, and I can't ever remember what I call them because it's probably not their regular name.
Yeah, and it's probably outdated or whatever. So yeah, anyway, but I hate rumors about like this. It just makes my day. I'm trying to think who would replace him. I'm going down dark holes.
Yeah, I actually think
And we-
I think
There's a
There-
good list, Kim. I'm not worried.
there's more than smoke to this one though.
I
He's
agree.
going to be
I do
courted. He's
too.
going to be courted.
I do too. That's why I'm going down the black rabbit hole.
Kim, don't worry. I won't let you. I won't leave the show before I give you some plausible names that'll make you feel better. Okay, if he leaves.
Are you sure, Robbie?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Well, sure. What do you mean by
Okay,
sure?
Robbie.
What do you mean by sure?
Well, I mean plausible.
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to go get some assistant of an assistant of an assistant.
No.
person,
These are
you know?
all sitting head coaches. These are all sitting
say-
head coaches.
What's
with
that
Creighton
again,
ties.
Kim? The assistant of an assistant?
I'm not going to give you names.
Sounds like a Seinfeld thing.
Probably is a Seinfeld thing, Damon.
Oh shoot!
This is how you greet me on your return. I can't believe it.
Well, you and Ravi were having your own party. I didn't want to interrupt. I'm sorry. I'm
Well,
sorry.
as long as you still love Mason Miller, we're all good here.
Always.
Yeah,
always
I know
love
you were
Mason
like
Miller.
6 minutes for Miller.
Always
What's
love
going
Mason
on?
Miller. Always. He'll have a bigger
Yeah,
role next
but-
year. I'm not worried.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Oh yeah, he's gonna have a huge role next year.
He's going to have to, right?
Maybe we should hire Mike Miller because then we can just keep recruiting.
I don't know. I just
Free
watched
out.
him on a podcast with Steve Jackson. I don't know. Well, I don't know if we're ready for Mike Miller.
I'm not sure if Mike Miller's ready
Oh,
to take
come
that
on.
pay cut.
Man, my man was telling us
That's probably true.
great storyteller is Mike Miller.
He is.
He can hold court.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
What
he-
is the podcast? I'm what's the
So
name of
it
the
wasn't
podcast
with
again?
Steven Jackson. He was with two hoop guys, and he was telling a story of Shaq and Pat Riley getting into it over him, Mike Miller, being sent to
Yeah.
the showers. And how Shaq went to bat for Mike Miller to like, hey man, don't go to the showers. Like, stick around. And Pat Riley was like, go to the showers. Mike Miller was like, man, I'm going to the showers. I want my job. And he said Shaq came
Wow.
down and came to get him. And Shaq and Pat Riley almost came to blows. It was classic.
By the way, I wouldn't mind having Shaq in my corner.
So that appears to be what everybody said. Like Alonzo Mourning stood down. Like all the tough guys stood down when Shaq got mad.
Yeah, why not? I mean, dude's a beast.
Yeah,
but
it's a big
I don't
guy.
think he's ready to coach. I don't think he's ready to coach Creighton. So
Let's get Shaq in here. He can coach
Yeah,
Creighton.
big Aristotle.
Kim, we appreciate it. It's always
Yeah.
great to hear from you, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon.
okay, I'm not changing the contact name. Okay.
Yeah, just
That's
keep
good.
adding names on there.
That's
Just
great.
throw a DB on the end
DB's
of it
Fred
now.
now. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Have a great day, guys.
Speaking of DB's friends, we got Michigan Lance here. We got Michigan Lance joining us now. Wants to chat a little bit. Lance, what's going on, man?
Hey, good morning, boys. How y'all doing this morning?
Lance of the Michigan flavor. How are you?
Oh, I'm feeling good, feeling great, man. Still on that national championship high,
Oh Lord.
you know.
Oh Lord. That's a really
Hey, man, what-
that was a really good football team. Really good football. team.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Ravi, let me give you some advice, man.
What's up?
Never play the hokey pokey with Andrew or Damon. Because these guys know to hop in and hop out better than anybody.
Wow, that's what we're
I
on
don't
this
know what's
morning.
I don't know what's going on here. But
No, I'm just hard to
Ravi,
work with,
don't,
Lance.
don't do it.
I'm just hard
No,
to work
Ravi.
with.
Nah, that happened before you, Ravi, or I
Yeah,
don't
he
know
knows.
what's
I
going
mean, he knows.
But, yeah.
Lance knows.
So, man, I'm looking through the comments. I didn't know. So Mac might be leaving, man. I didn't know this was a topic going on now. Like, what is this? What is there? The rumors? Is there something to it? What's going on here?
I don't know. I'll wait But I definitely think there's something to it. I imagine the print guy's got to be chomping at the bit. I assume something's coming here in the next couple of days with the State of the Union because it's so closely connected here.
Mhm.
Somebody will write something.
Chattel?
And
That would be
so-
my
and
that
the
would be my
season is-
guess. I
and
would
the season isn't
because
even-
he knows the most, or he's been around the longest.
So they're gonna do that like right now, like in the season, in the middle of the
I don't
season?
don't think you can control it, right?
Wow.
I promise this was a coincidence. We've been talking about this Ohio State basketball job since Monday, right? Well, and it's the first time I've been back, but I'm sure it seemed out of place and out of pocket. And why is this dude talking about Ohio State randomly? And I promise you, I didn't know.
Not till yesterday, right? I mean,
Probably
Tuesday
morning.
Yeah.
Tuesday
So
morning.
why is Ohio State always the one that's brought
So
up? 'Cause
that's
they were
what
brought up years ago,
listen.
too.
So that's what we've been talking about in terms of the job, its perception, like what kind of job is Ohio State. I gave Ravi some numbers that since I've been in high school, they have 9 regular season Big Ten Conference championships, and since 2002. They have 5 conference tournament championships. Does that number seem those seem high? They seemed high to me.
They seem. I would say they seem about right. I mean, because how many Final Fours have they been to? It hasn't been a lot, has it? Since then, I don't remember. I mean, they made one Final Four in the 2010s, 2000 maybe.
Well, are you talking about it in modern era? So post 1995.
Well, since you were born. Let's say since you were born.
3.
I mean, how many
99, 07, and 12. They were in the Final Four.
Oh, so 3. Okay. All right. Yeah.
And I mean, they were runner up in 07.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with Greg Oden in them.
Yeah, Mike Conley, Greg Oden, that whole crew.
So Elite 8, since I graduated from high school, they've been there 5 times. I think 92, 99.
That sounds about right.
7, 12, and 13.
Yeah,
that
right.
sounds about right with Ohio State. Yeah,
It's more than I thought.
It is higher than I thought, for sure.
Yeah, I would say higher, but not dramatically higher to me because I've been following the Big Ten since I was a kid, so I know they've always had good teams. It's a good sports program school, so all the way around. So yeah, I'm not too surprised with that. I don't know what. I think it's right below that second tier group under the Blue Bloods. I think they're that. You know what I mean? So I think that's where they're right about where they're at. So I think it's a top job right under the Blue Bloods.
Do you know?
what I mean?
Holtman went to the NCAA tournament every year outside of the COVID year. Obviously, since
the guy they got now.
Yeah, well, that they had.
Well, they had. Oh yeah. Oh, they just fired that guy. See, I'm not even following men's like that. See, I didn't even know that guy got fired. But I do know that I have watched them a couple times. The way they play, I never thought. It always looked like they were better than the way they played. I didn't like the way they played. It was.
I mean, you got your own basketball
kind of
issues,
fun.
man. Guys traveling on the road, not traveling on the road, academic.
Hey man,
eligible.
I
told you 2 years ago that Juwan Howard's act would wear thin.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I said he did not seem like a manual guy.
Oh, okay.
What's
What's the manual? What do you mean by that?
Low maintenance. Manual strike. Now listen, again, we're not exchanging Christmas cards. He just doesn't strike me as the guy. He's a total juice worth the squeeze guy. Harbaugh, hey, juice was the squeeze was worth it. I don't think he feels like that with Juwan.
Hey man, and I'm fine with that. I'm about results, man. If you can't get it done, I don't care what I liked about you as a fan as a kid. If you're not winning, man, yeah, it's time to go. And you're right. Juwan Howard has been trending down. His arrow has been trending down.
Yeah. No more black socks and baggy shorts, babe.
Lance, appreciate the call.
Yeah, those days are over.
We appreciate the call. We'll talk to you again soon. Coming up next, we've got Mitch Sherman from The Athletic here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline by our guy Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, what's going on?
Morning, guys. How are you?
Mitch, my friend, I've missed you. It's that we can actually do more than text now. We can talk to each other as on a job level.
It's great to see you. It's been since a cold day in the corner of Memorial Stadium a couple of months ago since we last got together.
Yeah, wasn't that something? Without my teeth clicking, I did admire your ability to control your
coldness.
Yes, yes, it's very admirable. I'm like, in my head, it's funny. Like, you never know what people are thinking when you're really talking to them, because I didn't have to say anything at first. I was like, how is he
Not
sitting
freezing
still?
I didn't have to sit out there for an hour, but
The
others
setup.
did.
The setup for that was miserable too. Like, clip it right, and they didn't want to hear wind, so you had to put the little muff thing on, and it was very finite. And I'm like, it's like 1 degree out here. I'm ready to go inside.
That's the episode that they should do outside in October, or even like to preview the spring game if there's ever an opportunity for that, like with a late April episode.
Shout out to Gavin Felix and Big Red Wrap Up. That corner, there was no sun over there. Jay Moore was blocking what little light I had because he's like 6'13". I don't know. He's a big dude. Good to see you though, Mitch.
You guys too. You playing that quote out of the commercial. It's really interesting. The part that Matt Rule said in that interview the other night on the Huskers radio network about how you and I don't have to listen to the same music. We don't have to like the same food. But if I look over and I see you paying a price and I'm paying the same price, then I know I can count on you when things get hard. I wrote that down the other night, not because I was going to use it in an article, but because I'm going to use it in life, in, whether it's coaching my kids' team or whatever it might be, in some aspect of me going about my business. I thought that was super powerful, what he said. And obviously it's applicable to the Nebraska football team as they go through off-season training. And maybe it will factor into a story that I wrote, but I was that kind of taken by that comment. It's like where the preacher's son in Matt Rule really comes out, and you can see when he says stuff like that, what it is like to stand in front of him in a locker room or on a football field when he's trying to rally the guys, whether it's before kickoff, halftime, or just on at a February workout.
2 things, Mitch. This is why we get along, and I enjoy talking to him totally unsolicited. Number 1, he's always inquiring about my dad, like doing research and stuff. So I sent him a thing yesterday about my dad, and I said he would have been a big Coach Rule fan because, and all I had in my head was that quote right there, the one that Mitch just read, which I think is beautiful. Now, why does that resonate with me? Mitch, I'm not going to spill the tea, but I'll tell you, in our locker room, during a very tumultuous time, potentially with 2 competitive quarterbacks, a very similar sentiment was shared by a captain about those 2 guys on how and why we had to come together. Very different guys, very different styles. You don't have to like this. You don't have to gravitate towards that. But at the end of the day, we go through the same thing. So let's get our ass in gear, get it together, pull in the same direction. We have a goal. We have something we want to accomplish. Me listening to Coach Rule say that gave me goosebumps real time because it's applicable about a multitude of things. And I know Coach Rule, there's no way he knows that. I mean, nobody's telling him. He might. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, good point. Good point. The dude is a Berean. He does a lot of homework. But I can't believe you read that this morning. Like, that's who he is. That is exactly who he is.
That's maybe that's why the comment resonated to me too, because it spoke to me about a different time in the history of the program. Not necessarily about a time where championships were won, but about a time when there was a brotherhood that he's trying to recreate.
Yeah.
You know, Mitch, it's funny that DB brought up that quarterback scenario because we were talking about that earlier this week, and I tried to explain to him from somebody on the outside, just looking back at it and hearing these stories about, there were these
on Monday
kind of two sides to the locker
yeah.
room. One guy wanted Brooke, one guy wanted Tommy, and I tried to explain to him that navigating that and still having everyone on the same page might be the most impressive thing that any of those teams did, because the only other time you hear about a locker room split, quote unquote, where one guy's going for one quarterback, the other group's going for another quarterback, is when the season has gone totally off the rails. You never hear that story in a successful season, and that was potentially the best college football team of all time.
It's because of the things Mitch read.
Right, but that's what I mean. Like, that is one of the rarest things I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I would agree. You don't that's not usually the storyline for a championship team. So that's part of what makes that era of Nebraska football so unique.
So let me ask you something, Mitch, because we talk about this in on the other side, where a different time in their life, a coach may have done this, or he's been seasoned or she's been experienced enough for this time around, or they've learned because of this. I was thinking about this and talking to you this morning. You've been around, you've done a lot, you know a lot. How important is it from the media standpoint when you're getting a new coach in his tenure that it's a different phase in your life too, whether you're more experienced or more patient or less patient or have more in your repertoire that you've seen to compare and contrast, where you'd maybe treat Coach Rule or whomever the new coach is differently because of the timing that you're engaging in your life? Does it happen for media too?
Yeah, because everybody's got that human element, and I'm clearly connecting. And when I say connecting, I just mean like the ability to communicate. So I can clearly communicate with Matt Rule, who is separated in age with me by like 30 days, much differently than I could with Tom Osborne or with Frank Solich or with Bill Callahan. I mean, so that's just part of a human to human interaction. And, clearly, if you're asking about the media, the way the wheels turn,
You've seen it been through so much,
right? That leads to a different ability to be able to do my job. So it's about perspective. And in my case, and in covering college sports, a lot of it at Nebraska, but not all of it. There's 30 years of perspective, close to 30 years to be able to draw on. And hopefully, that's something that comes through in the content that's produced, but specifically in a human to person interaction with, it could be Matt Rule, it could be Tony White, it could be Evan Cooper, whoever it is on this staff. There's experiences there that I can draw on, or that you can draw on, or somebody else in that press conference room can be able to look back on in their life, and it definitely helps shape the the questions that are asked, and in the way the information is delivered when it comes out to the fans.
So I want to tell you where that question was birthed. I'm on a group text with a lot of former guys, and we were talking about the differences in media. And it was, well, this guy isn't covering sports anymore. He's not around. And, well, he's seen this, and there's a compare and contrast. And I always wondered, because I said this the first time around when I was doing the show, I said, there are some things that Coach Rule is saying that a lot of good coaches say. We're just not used to it. So we're still kind of and like, oh my gosh, like
we're enamored by it.
This is so refreshing.
Yeah.
So I always wonder from somebody that has your vantage point.
Yeah.
Is this relative to Coach Rule because you think it's the right thing to do, or is this in comparison to what you've seen and heard and you're comparing to from just where you're meeting him right where you're at?
Well, I'll take myself or any media out of the equation, because Matt Rule can verbalize without our help. He's a strong enough speaker that he could just get on a YouTube channel and say all the things that he wants to say and get the same points across oftentimes without us up there stumbling through questions to ask him at a press conference. But I had a similar conversation with somebody yesterday about the message that he delivers on, and this was about Tony White, and about how I think you kind of referenced this. Like, a lot of coaches you think would say this and should say this, but it's not something that you generally hear, and it's certainly not something that you see put into action the way that he has seemingly put it into action. And I'm talking about him stumping for Tony White, his number one guy, his most valuable piece of the coaching staff, his $1.6 million defensive coordinator. And here we are in February, and he's still out there stumping for him to get a job at a school that is coming into the Big Ten and is on Nebraska's schedule next season. Yeah. So, making a call to the athletic director at that school, that's going above and beyond. And these are things that you would think a head coach should do. Like, if there's 130 head coaches out there, most of them, I think, if asked about one of their coordinators getting a job at another school, would say, I want the best for that guy. Very few of them, I think, would do it unsolicited and then go and make that call and talk about it publicly and continue to beat that drum and really put their actions behind what they're saying. So that's a case, I think, where it seems like this should be a pretty cut and dry issue. Like, of course, head coaches want their assistants to have opportunities, but it's a lot more rare than you might think that they actually say it in the way that he says it and then go do it like he has, especially at this time of year when it's very difficult to find a replacement.
We're talking with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic on the War Horse Sportsbook Hotline. Mitch, you mentioned kind of how, that whole sequence would have been to Nebraska's detriment in the immediate, right? Like, it would have been they would have been worse off for losing Tony White in this moment, right? And whenever Tony White does leave for a head coaching job, which seems inevitable, they will be worse off for it. And then I take that, and then I take it back to the quote you read of, if they're willing to pay the same price I am, they're paying the same price I am, then that's somebody that you can trust, you can count on. And then I go over to the other side of the ball with the coordinators. And you see the sacrifices being made on that side of the ball, where Marcus Satterfield is maybe sacrificing a little bit of his comfort in having Glenn Thomas be on as offensive coordinator and be willing to say, hey, this is what's best for the team, even if maybe professionally it's not what's best for me. How important is it to not only have your coaching staff talk like that, but then in the actual going about of hiring coaches and assigning roles and things like that, you actually see it play out as well in the way they act?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that Nebraska's restructured its offensive staff is a reflection of the expectations that Matt Rule and these coaches have for their players in the program. They're asking guys to sacrifice for the betterment of the guy next to them in the locker room. And sure, for Marcus Satterfield to go from coaching the quarterbacks, the most high-profile position on the team, to taking on the tight ends, it can be perceived. And I think Matt Rule's gone out of his way to make it clear that this is not a demotion. This is not like something that should be a hit for him as far as like his own prestige or what his ego. But, some people aren't going to hear that. Some people, whether they're in Nebraska or out of Nebraska, are going to look at this coaching staff. They're going to hear anything that Matt Rule says in the offseason, and they're going to call up the bios of the coaches in August or September next year, and they're just going to make comments about, and it's going to be a storyline that people hear in the Big Ten or nationally, that, hey, they replaced their quarterbacks coach, or they got Satterfield some help as with a co-offensive coordinator, and that part of it is accurate. But for Rule and his coaches, there's a real push to not have that be the priority. They're gonna make their moves. They're going to say what this is, and then they're going to move on and do their jobs. And that's the expectation that they have for their players too. If you play a position and somebody else comes in who's better at that position, and you've got to make a shift and do something to be able to help the team, then that's what's expected of you in the Nebraska program. So it only makes sense in a functional environment that if it's expected of the coaches, then it should be expected of the players, and vice versa.
Unbelievable. So I go back to conversation we had. This is when he first got here, and he was talking about getting players to turn the corner and believe. And he said he was talking to a player in particular, and he said, I've done this a long time. I've got NFL experience. I've got combine experience. I have your best interest at heart. Why would you want to be combative with me in practice? Like, I am for you. And he said, he's like, Damon, this takes time because you have to model the behavior. So when I'm listening to you, the power and the practical application of being who you say you're going to be, if I can cheer and champion Tony White to go get a job, and it could momentarily hurt me but help him, why, if I'm Taman Lynham, wouldn't I listen to Coach Rule if he says, hey, man, if you just do this, this can happen for you? Or if I'm Gifford and, hey, if you stick around just one more time, make the sacrifice, you can get this on the other end. Like, those real life applications, they seem simple, but certainly aren't easy.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people probably underestimate how much the players are watching and how much they see everything that's going on around the program. So if you are one of those players and you've had the head coach or one of the assistant coaches come to you and say, we're going to ask you to do this because, while it may look like a setback in the short term, it's going to be a benefit for you down the road, either like professionally or in your college career. They're more apt to do it because they see the way that the whole operation works at a larger level. Sometimes we think the players just come in, get their practices in, get their lifting in, and watch film, and then they're on their way. But that's obviously not the reality of it. They're living and breathing and sleeping the football, just like in many ways, just like the staff is. So they know what's going on. They know the inner workings of things. They see probably more than even the staff believes that they see or expects that they see. And they're going to model some of their behaviors and their patterns in the way that they go about their business after the as a result of the observations that they make.
Mitch, I'm been wondering about this a little bit over the last week or so since we started hearing from Glenn Thomas a little bit. And I know you wrote a story about the culture fit of Glenn Thomas with Matt Rule. And so I asked DB this and we didn't really have an answer. So I'm just curious if you have any insight to maybe the reasoning behind why Glenn Thomas wasn't on the staff, I guess, from the beginning. I know there was the Jake Peets thing a little bit last year as quarterbacks coach. Was it just simply the fact they had an opportunity to move back to the NFL and wanted to give that a shot? Or do you have any insight there? I've been really curious about that.
No, I don't. I mean, I think it was a timing thing with Thomas, and he was coming from Arizona State, and I don't know what we've only had those 20 minutes on Monday with him to kind of dive into his career and the path that he took. So I'm looking forward, whether it'll probably be this spring to be able to get with him one-on-one and talk about why he chose to go back to the NFL. I don't know that he had an opportunity a year ago. You have to kind of match up the dates. I mean, he may have just taken the job with the Steelers when Matt Rule was starting to put together a staff, or maybe it was the opposite. Rule got his staff together first, and they like you said, they were pursuing another guy, Jake Peets, who was in the NFL, and but that oftentimes like there's good fits out there from a coaching standpoint, and they don't work just because the timing doesn't match up. And without knowing the details of it, that's probably where I would look first. And also, Thomas, his career springboarded the first time he went to the NFL and was with the Falcons. So in the place that he was at last year, perhaps he was looking to take his career in a different direction and get that springboard again. So go spend some time in the NFL with the Steelers and use that as a jump to get himself either to another level in the NFL or to come back into college. But, the fact is that he would have been a good fit for Nebraska a year ago with the way that Matt Rule was putting the staff together. It just didn't piece together. And he is a good fit now. No matter how this thing works out, there's no question how it works out with the quarterbacks and their development and what the path that Dylan Raiola and Daniel Kaelin's careers and Heinrich Harburg's careers take from here. No matter what, the one thing that is that Rule and Satterfield and Thomas are a fit because they've done it before, not just at one school, they've done it at two schools.
Interesting. At the end of the day, before we get you out of here, Mitch, seems like 3 is the number. Glenn, Coach Tom, I want 3 guys ready. Is it a blessing, excuse me, that the quarterback scholarship numbers are a little low, probably not ideal heading into spring, so you can focus on getting whatever 3 guys ready to play since that's the goal? Or do you think at some point down the road you go back and get a 4th because we've seen it evaporate in a hurry around here?
Yeah, there can be times where you need a 4th in the season. I think it really just depends on, one, all 3 of those guys staying healthy through the spring, and 2, just what they see from their development. Heinrich Harburg is the wild card in this because they would like to use him in a role where he can really be a contributor to this offense. I mean, that means being on the field.
They would like that even a year ago, right?
Yeah, right. If things would have worked out the way that was intended with Jeff Sims, Heinrich Harburg could have been in that role in 2023. So they're giving this thing another shot. And if everything's a go with Dylan, and they've got a situation, and this is the way I would project it. This is that they've got a situation with Kaelin where he can come in and, get 4 games or 3 games and just be a developmental guy in the program. I mean, this is again, the way it projects.
Yeah, myopic. Yeah.
Tools that they're bringing to the table. And that's all good. And Heinrich can be your Swiss Army knife. Then I think they'll entertain the idea of going and getting a 4th guy. But that's all got to play out in the spring. So I could still see it going either way.
It's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, good stuff as always. We'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Mitch.
That's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit of Omaha Supernovas with Coach Kuhn here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and I want to tell you about our friends at the Omaha Supernovas. We're about to talk to Coach Kuhn here in just a second, but before we do that, I want to tell you where you can go to find tickets for Sunday's match against the Orlando Valkyries, and that is supernovas.com. Omaha's got a match on the road today, which I'm sure we'll talk to Coach about, but they're back home on Sunday, CHI Health Center, 5 p.m. Make sure you go to supernovas.com. You can check out the schedule. They've got a shop. You can get some merch, and you can get tickets to Sunday's match as well. That's supernovas.com. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Coach Laura Kuhn, the head coach of the Omaha Supernovas. Coach, how are you this morning?
Hi there. Good morning. How are you guys doing?
Good. Good morning, Coach.
Coach, you're coming off of a 3-1 win over Grand Rapids, and it was quite the match. Even though you were able to get that victory in 4 sets, there was a couple real close kind of overtime sets there as well. Kind of talk us through those second and third sets where things are going extra.
Yes, I love the overtime talk. Yes, that was kind of overtime. It's a great way to put it. Yeah, that second set in Grand Rapids really, I call it like a character check. We went 33-31, and we've been talking about finishing with this group a lot in the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
And just earning points. They did it. That might have been one of the best sets I've ever had the opportunity to coach, and this group is resilient in that. But, yeah, I mean, Grand Rapids was solid. We knew they were going to be a good team. first road win, but the extra points in those sets, that was the epitome of earning points. And our team finished. There were some long rallies, probably some of the best volleyball to date in this league, even as you could probably watch on the stream. But we just found a way, and we knew we needed to get our middles going. We've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, but those points in those last the sets 2 and 3, the extra points, that is what it's going to come down to in this league right now. And we know being on the road, it's going to be a grind like that, but I'm proud of the team for finishing. And then obviously in the fourth, we finished pretty strong, just, 25-21, just some normal volleyball.
Just some regulation volleyball.
Just a day, just an ordinary day.
Coach, when you talk about finishing matches, what are some of the things, like how do you work on that outside of actually being in the moment, right? Because that's always the tricky thing as a coach, is situationally trying to recreate these circumstances that you're going to be put in. How do you try and do that with this group so that you are able to get into some overtime sets and be able to come out with the victory there?
So we talk about a lot of things, but first ball kill, that's something that you just terminate faster. So like if we're in serve receive, we want to side out faster, so more efficiently, and that's just using all of our weapons, whether it's the middles, the front row, or the back row attacks, setters when they're front row, them attacking second ball. But first ball kills, that cleans up those long rallies, but just terminating faster. So we worked on that yesterday. That was our first practice since then, but also just knowing how to attack specifically based on the team, the opponent we're playing against. And so we looked at that last night rotationally. Obviously, there's 6 different rotations in volleyball, but we went through all the rotations and we just did kind of like a first ball kill using all the weapons, making sure we got everyone going offensively. And we know it's going to be a grind. We know we're going to have long rallies, but figuring out how to find kills faster in those rallies.
Coach, this is interesting in a day and age of so much data, right? And it's a volleyball state, and whether it's high school or college, our eyes are trained to look at statistical data. Do you feel like you have a good enough handle this early? Is it fitness? Is it hitting percentage? Is it set pieces? Is it rallies? Do you have enough like data to kind of zero on what some keys will be for success in this league from an analytics standpoint yet?
Like overall, I think we have a small kind of gauge of where we want to be, but it's going to change and match to match. There's going to be matchups. There's going to be different people that will go off for us in terms of offense or defense. And so we have to kind of adapt and adjust into each match. Right now, the first contact, that across the boards in volleyball, that's your first contact is their serving and your serve receive. We have done very well controlling that first contact in our first, 3 matches so far, 3 to 4 matches. Now it comes down to the efficiency, like you guys are saying, like the attack efficiency, and how clean we can be as we take care of the ball on the first contact.
So is that the in system versus out of system? Or at this level, are you able to adjust quicker when things are a little out of system?
Yes. We obviously want to focus on our first contact. So serving is huge. The team knows that. We really work on having a clean first contact when it comes to serving. And I think we've done really well with that. And then passing, keeping us a system so we can use our back row attack and our middle as we want, not just as an out of system option. Out of system attacking is huge. So our pins have to be smart. And we always talk about you can be smart and not attacking all the time. Even if you're tipping or throwing the ball, you can place that and get a team on the ropes so that you have a better chance defending. And so it's like not only just attacking all the time, but it's attacking even when you're being smart out of system.
We're talking with Omaha Supernovas interim head coach Laura Kuhn. Coach, you got that. You got moved from that assistant to the head coach role a couple matches ago. How has your job changed moving into that head coach's seat?
Honestly, with this group of professional athletes, it really comes down to the communication and how we can find ways for them to be successful. My role obviously has changed label-wise, but Shelton built such a strong roster. It's been a smooth transition in that I was a player coach turned to just facilitating more of what we need to do to improve match to match. And so this opportunity has been a unique one, but very special to me because I've been here from the start. And so the relationships are there, and now it's just figuring out ways in training to prepare them for each match.
So a lot of times we talk about the difference in going from, college to professional ranks in a multitude of other sports. For you, going back to statistics a little, what's kind of the biggest hidden transition so far that you've seen from pro volleyball to the collegiate level that we kind of undersell watching so much college volleyball here?
I mean, if you go back and watch our Grand Rapids match, it's the level of play. Some of those rallies, even the defense. I mean, the defensive plays that both teams are making and being in system in order to set your middles, your back row, having all your options. I think that is what people, when you watch, grasping the level of play that you're watching. Because even we're like, oh my gosh, like the stops and the saves, but the fact that they're doing it and then they're still in system and the setters have all the options, whether it was us or Grand Rapids. I mean, that was such a high-level match. And, yeah, there's going to be some one-off plays where, people make errors and things like that. But overall, like you guys said, those overtime sets, when we went to 30s and above 25, I mean, those were straight out people. We were earning points on both sides.
That's Coach Laura Kuhn from our Omaha Supernovas. Coach, good luck tonight in Vegas, and we will see you back here at home on Sunday.
Appreciate you getting up early with us, Coach.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It'll be a good one again tonight.
You got it.
All right. We'll talk to you again soon. That is Omaha Supernovas interim head coach Laura Kuhn. Again, the Supernovas play tonight in Vegas. You can watch that on YouTube, or you can come and watch them in person on Sunday at the CHI Health Center at 5 p.m.
I thought she may say fitness, right?
Yeah.
Because they've been in extras a couple of times already. And usually as you get older, people have varying degrees of what matters. Do you want to be more efficient with your body? Do you want to try to stretch it a little more?
Yeah.
I think fitness, some of these long rallies are unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. Because it's not just the fitness of the entire match, but like the point itself.
With the
extended rallies gets a little kind of a little ridiculous, to be honest. Like some of those are
like, are you practicing that?
That's what I mean, right? And you've got these points that you get an opportunity. You're like, okay, this is an opportunity to score here. And it's like, nope, that's coming back to me. Like there's got to be a mental adjustment there as well. Coming up next, we're going to talk to our guy, B. Edwards, see if we can make a little money here on a Thursday. That's coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. All right, before we get to B. Edwards here as we wrap up hour number 2 on Hurrdat Sports Radio, if you want to go see the Omaha Supernovas on Sunday, I'll be there. You can go check them out. Give us a call right now. First person to call Shano, 888-638-4876. We'll get tickets to the Omaha Supernovas on Sunday. Give Shano a call, 888-638-4876 on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, and you will get tickets if you're the first person to call to the Omaha Supernovas on Sunday. Speaking of Warhorse, if you want to place any of these bets that B. Edwards is about to give you, make sure you get out to the Warhorse Sportsbook in Lincoln or the Horseman's Park kiosks in Omaha, 6303 Q Street. Warhorse Sportsbook is the best place to place your bets in the state of Nebraska. You can place straight bets, parlays, live in-game bets, props. Almost every major sporting event is accepted at Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. Joining us now on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is B. Edwards. What's going on, man?
What's up, gentlemen? How we doing? Damon, congrats on your son's recruitment.
I appreciate that. Thank you. You and I'm like your government. You can't ever quite get rid of me. I'll always kind of resurface. I mean, we're going on double-digit years, and I'm back.
I like it. Is he early enrolled, or is he still play? Does he play high school or
Yeah,
baseball
so
or basketball?
he really could have graduated, but he's going to try to see if they can win a state championship.
So he's a hooper.
Yeah,
And hoops?
and
Nice.
yeah, he's okay. So they sent his workouts last week, so he'll get cranked. He'll still be in school technically, but he'll start working out as soon as the season's over, the second week in March.
And what's that drive from Omaha to Lincoln?
It's from my house to the locker room is 38 minutes.
Oh, I didn't know it was that close.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the skirts right by the interstate, and it's about 38 minutes door to door.
Oh wow, I was thinking it was at least an hour and a half or so. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it really is. So we're excited.
Good deal.
B, as we get into some picks this week, you've got I'm gonna jump to the one that sticks out to me the most. You got my Golden State Warriors on there at Utah. I'll be honest, I've had a really hard time getting a feel on this Golden State team, although they are playing better as of late. What do you like there with Golden State as a 2-point favorite on the road?
Well, both of these teams have been pretty good to me. I was kind of a fade of Golden State a decent amount early in the year, and then lately they've been awesome to me, except for last night. And he had an 11-point lead going into the fourth quarter and let it get away. But I'll go right back to them. Now, I had been backing Utah a ton, but they have slumped here lately. Now, both teams in a back-to-back spot. But Utah is 2-6, both straight up and against the spread in their last 8, really struggling all of a sudden. Whereas before last night's fourth quarter collapse, Golden State had won 5 in a row, both straight up and against the spread. They had won 7 of 8, both straight up and against the spread, with the only loss in overtime. And of those 7 wins, 5 had been by double-digit margins. They've dominated the Jazz in recent years, 8-2 straight up, 8-1-1 against the spread in the last 10. So I'm going to do Golden State -2. Now, I wouldn't make a big investment like early in the day. I mean, I'm not saying it's a big investment period anyway, but especially being in a back-to-back, I mean, I'm almost certain Steph will play, but maybe Clay would get downgraded. So maybe keep an eye on that. But nothing, even if Clay got downgraded, I still like it. But being a back-to-back, you never know.
Hey, B, how long has it taken you to kind of adjust to the fact that winning on the road has been so difficult, whether it's top 25 versus non-ranked or whatever? I mean, winning on the road has been brutal. Does the data reflect that when you're looking at these games?
Yeah, especially early in the year. Now, there have been some teams that have, broken out on the road a little bit. Like I had Richmond last night. They were undefeated with only 1 non-cover at home all year, but they got beat at home. So I feel like the road teams are starting to, get some wins here later in the year. But yeah, in January and early February, it was like, home dogs were just on insane runs. And a lot of the ranked teams going to unranked were getting beat. But I feel like some road teams have been stepping up here the last week or two.
Yeah, a couple tricky ones here as Vegas is trying to adjust with Boo Booey and company, Northwestern going to Rutgers. Rutgers is hard to get a gauge on. I mean, significantly worse record, but they are at home and a decent sized fade, 4.5.
Okay. Well, an hour or so ago, I was looking at 3.5. If they're 4.5, that might be a little
4.5.
I'm seeing some 4s at like 108. There's a 4.5 at like 105. It's
creeping up there.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I would not want to go all the way to 4.5. As long as it's 4 or fewer, I like Rutgers. Now, not an ideal year for Rutgers, but still pretty tough at the rack. 10-3, straight up 8-5 against the spread. Northwestern just lost one of their better players, Ty Berry, out for the season, towards meniscus, actually against Nebraska. last week. And he was their top 3-point shooter, top free throw shooter, fourth leading scorer. So they're down to basically a 7-man rotation. And the Scarlet Knights playing some of their best hoops. They've won 3 in a row, both straight up and against the spread, and beat Wisconsin by 22 at the rack this past weekend. So again, I would not go higher than 4, but at 4 or fewer, I'm going to go Rutgers here at home.
We're talking with Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. B, the lines aren't out quite yet for Nebraska ball's game on Saturday against Penn State, but you're thinking they're going to be about -7? Is that the number you like them up to?
Yes. Nebraska has been really good to me at home. Just watched Penn State struggle against Northwestern this past Sunday afternoon. Penn State had stepped up and had some pretty good games before that, but Nebraska, I know urgency does not always translate into success, but Nebraska still needs to pad that resume with some good wins. Certainly a bubble team right now, and they've just been automatic at home all year, and a good deal of double-digit wins as well. So 7 or fewer, I would like Nebraska. And if you like a money line parlay on a big Saturday card, regardless of what the number is, I would like Nebraska on the money line in a parlay. I wouldn't want to lay -400.
What about the Jays with
that house of horrors called Hinkle?
Yeah. Rumors swirling. Where's Mac's next potential destination? Is he staying home? Like, that's a tricky one. Butler dealt them fits on the road. Now they go home. What do you think here with the Jays tentatively?
Yeah, they're gonna be a short favorite. I would probably lean Creighton, but Butler has been playing pretty pesky here lately. If it were 3 or more, I wouldn't do it. 2 or less, I would lean Creighton, but it wouldn't be a big play because Butler's playing pretty good ball. What are you talking about? Have you heard McDermott rumors to Ohio State? Is that what you were referencing there?
Oh yeah, I think there's a lot. I think depending on what happens.
Does he have history there?
Well, they courted him
in 2017.
2017, and it got pretty serious then.
And the former Nebraska president,
Ted Carter is at
Ohio State. So they're very familiar with each other.
And he's got a senior-laden team.
I'm curious to see what happens with Arizona State. They strike me as a little bit of a dark horse too. So we'll see what happens in Tempe.
Yeah, it seems like Hurley is probably out of there.
Borrowed time, right? I
thought he was
always seemed better than how they play.
Mm-hmm.
I know he had 22 guards a year ago, but still.
Back to Creighton, I think they're worth a future play. Actually, I got a little bit of them at 60-1 last week. I saw 45-1 at FanDuel. I mean, we it's mostly the same team. I know Nimhart's gone, and there's a few different pieces, but they're very capable, I think, of getting hot.
What do you like anything this weekend for UFC? You got Powell's a huge dog. He's plus 200, and you got Volkanovski, kind of his natural weight. That's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, man. I don't go against Volk, but man, I love this Taporia kid in general. Went over to Jacksonville and watched him put it on Emmett, and I don't know.
He's getting a lot of backing. What is he's like? Is it Volk's only a slight fave, right?
Well, I mean, earlier in the week it was like -120. Last night it was Volk -130. But I mean, obviously Taporia is getting a ton of respect from the market and odds makers.
He's been through so many hard fights.
Volk, I know,
yeah.
And this is coming back pretty quick off the knockout. That's a tough one. I really want to watch weigh-ins and the presser because what's Costa going to do with his weight? And look, Jeff Neal looked great against Shavkat. I know he lost, but this is Gary's toughest test. And
it's good money, good plus money on Neal, like plus 190.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm tempted on Jeff Neal. I want to watch the presser. I want to see him. I want to see the height difference too. I want to see their face off. And who knows on Mirab and Cejudo? I mean, talk about great ground games.
Yeah.
So I really have nothing right now. I want to see weigh-ins and the pressers. And so I'm kind of low on picks today, guys. I will throw out that I think FAU is still worth a future play at 75-1. Just some small change. I mean, they're not covering a lot, but they're still mostly winning. And it's that same team that lost at the buzzer in the Final Four. I think they can get hot again.
Yep.
That's Brian Edwards, BrianEdwardsSports.com, Vegas Insider, MajorWager.com. B, we appreciate your time as always. Catch up with you next week.
Thanks, B.
Yes. Sorry, not more picks today, guys.
No, you're
Y'all
good.
All good. All good. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. And for this third hour, we're on KFOR in Lincoln as well. I want to say congrats real quick to Adam in Lincoln for winning those Supernovas tickets. And as he's driving up here on Sunday, want to remind him and all of you, hands on the wheel, eyes and focus straight ahead. The driver has one job to do, and that is to drive. Focus and just drive. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is our friend from Husker 24/7, Michael Bruntz. Bruntsy, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. How you guys doing?
Hi, MB. How we doing?
Yeah, long time.
Long time. Long time.
Yeah, long time no speak. Yeah, I'm good. No complaints. You guys doing all right?
Are you? Did you celebrate Mike and Shelby's newest edition, or were you like, can't wait to see how this plays out?
I don't think those are mutually exclusive.
I'm Team Hudson. Let's go.
Congratulations, and let me get my popcorn.
Yeah, no, I'm here for any just if you need to vent, that's fine. You can do that. But no, I'm really happy for them. But yeah, they're in it. They're like a weekend. Schaefer's not a coffee guy, so I don't know how he's living right now. But no, I'm very happy for them. Yeah,
it's funny, but it's not funny. This is so childish. The very first thing I thought of, and I know you'll get this, is Mike J. Schaefer dealing with school pickup and drop off with how people navigate a school parking lot. He is going to lose his mind.
Yeah. No, it's true. Like
I've already fast forwarded 5 years. I'm like,
that's the funniest part is you going 5 years ahead.
Yeah, there's mile markers that I'm really looking forward to him experiencing. That's one. He does a lot of radio appearances, and as a veteran of trying to like wrangle kids while also doing radio, I look forward to the first time like Hudson goes Macho Man Randy Savage off the couch when he's trying to like talk Nebraska recruiting on the radio. I've done that.
What you gonna do, brother?
Better catch your kid.
Yeah.
Bruntz, where you going?
Yeah.
Oh, I got
Like,
trying to avoid stitches.
You got to poop right now. Right now, you got to poop. Really? Because I've done that one before. So.
Sorry, guys, gotta cut the combo short.
Oh, shoot.
I'm like hitting mute on my phone like as much as I can. Like,
Yeah. Bruntz, I gotta say though, for what Schaefer usually does, he timed this pretty well.
Yeah. No, I mean that's my kids were born in like late July and mid-October, so he did a better job of that than I did.
Good, that's some. We gotta give him some credit. Brunsey, when you look at the upcoming season for Nebraska, Shane had line of the day yesterday too. I was like, I'm getting back into the swing of things. I got to talk to the guys that really like. I said we got to get Brunsey, and Shane replied back. He's like, okay, Bruntz at 9, and he's okay to talk baseball. And I go, well, that's good because that's what he covers. Like, did you feel like that was part of why I wanted to talk to him?
A
like,
large portion of his job.
Thank you for keeping me informed. But Runcie, did you realize Nebraska hasn't won a opening season weekend since 2021?
Yeah, I do. Last year, what was it? They were in San Diego last year. It was the 16-16 game, which that was
Whoa.
What's that noise again?
Somebody told Bruncie last night on social media that his humor was underrated.
Oh, it absolutely
I'm like,
is.
no, it's not. I've been telling people this for years, and people look at me like I'm crazy.
He's a very funny guy.
I'm appropriately rated. I think it's tough, and the kind of opening weekend is always a little bit fraught with danger for teams from the north, anyways, for the reasons that everybody's pretty familiar with, I think. But when you're a team like Nebraska in the Big Ten, if you have aspirations of making it to the NCAA tournament, you have to schedule tough games right out of the chute, because that's your opportunity to get games that are going to help you in the RPI later. And that's just it's a challenge, I think, for a team to be kind of clicking right out of the gates, and that's the challenge that Nebraska has. I mean, you get Baylor, Oklahoma, and Texas Tech, three really good teams right out of the chute, and I think there's questions about this pitching staff. I think they feel like they have guys that can do it. It's just a matter of figuring out who those guys are, and getting them in the right roles. But yeah, I mean that's the challenge every year for Nebraska is how do you kind of come out clicking right away? And they've done that at times, but not with any kind of consistency. I mean, even Darren Erstad's teams, they'd go down to Arizona and play like Oregon State right out of the gate, and that's just really tough to do when you're just kind of trying to get your feet under you for a season and you're playing one of the best teams in college baseball. So yeah, I mean, it's taken a few weeks, I think, for them to sometimes get going, and that sometimes hurts you later in the year.
Bruntz, when you look at this roster and how it's assembled, you obviously mentioned the pitching staff, which has been an area of concern. Is there anywhere else that you're looking at with some major question marks on how this team is constructed? Someplace
in the lineup too than maybe what they've had. I mean, I don't know that they have the
with like Horn and Timmerman, or
well, yeah. I mean, I think they've got probably about 7 guys that they would feel okay about throwing out there this weekend in a starting role. I mean, I think that's kind of where they're at. And when you kind of dig into the numbers and guys that have kind of been through it in the bullpen, they're in a lot better position, at least on paper, than they were a year ago. I mean, they've got 3 or 4 guys that are veteran, high leverage guys at the back of that bullpen. Where last year it was just like, can we get the ball to Shea Shanneman, and can he hopefully go 2 times in a weekend for us? So I think they've upgraded there. I mean, I just think a lot of the questions I have are just kind of the unknowns of just new faces. I mean, when you look at the lineup, I think you're obviously, having to replace Max Anderson and Bryce Matthews, which is no easy thing to do. But I mean, I think you're kind of doing it in the aggregate. It's going to look a little bit different. You're not going to be as dependent on the home run as they were a year ago. And, I think there's a little bit of question about whether that approach is going to work, but I think they've got a little bit more of a 1 through 9 that you feel good about than what they had last season too. So I've told people with this roster, I think this one more than many from the ones that I've covered, there's just a lot of like wait and see with this group. Mm-hmm. And, I think over there, they feel like the way that this roster is constructed aligns a little bit more closely with the approach they want to take. There's guys that are a little bit more kind of the dirtbag grinder type guys than maybe what they've had in the past. And I think they've got kind of a wealth of arms that people don't really know about yet, but I think over there they feel okay about guys that are going to be able to throw strikes and get out.
Bruntz, I like how you just slid in a little Moneyball reference there and thought nobody would notice with the aggregate.
Who's Fabio?
Wow, good catch.
He's a shortstop for Seattle. I've seen that movie too many times. So would you describe, it kind of sounds what you're describing here is like they've got a lot of options, but not a lot of answers. Is that a fair way to sum up what you were saying there?
Yeah, no, I think that's really fair. I mean, I do think that they've got guys that in scrimmages and even in the fall they've felt pretty good about. But you see Nebraska get picked 5th in the league, and I know that Big Ten baseball coaches are always they're not the best at the preseason prognosticating. So when Nebraska's picked 5th, you're like, okay, what's going on here? But I think there's a lot of volatility with this roster. I mean, I think a lot of it is just people even in the conference don't really know what Nebraska has this year. And we'll find out what that kind of looks like.
But, Maryland can hit in that ballpark. Indiana's going to be there. Iowa can pick it. Pitch it. I don't really have any problems with however you put the order in the top 3 of Iowa, Indiana, and Maryland, though, right? Or do you?
Well, I mean, Maryland lost their head coach, pretty much everybody that contributed in that lineup, and they're lacking some veteran arms. I think what I would agree with is Iowa and Indiana, I think, are your top 2, and then you take that kind of next tier of teams, and you could probably
that ballpark is still going to fit Maryland's offense, though.
Well, sure, it's 275 to dead center. I mean, anybody can hit it out of that park. But I think
Shano.
I think that's they got the rangefinder out. It was not listed. It's not what it's listed. But
do you like Rutgers?
Yeah, I think they're a team that's trending up. I think they finally got that figured out. They've got a picture that they recruit to, and I think they'll be in there. But I think that group of like 3 through 6, you could basically put them in the Yahtzee Cup, shake them up, and feel pretty okay about however you'd predict that to go.
I'm sorry, guys. I just need a minute here because I'm just grappling with the fact here that Maryland is 275 to the fence because this is
don't trust Bruntz.
No, he's probably right because he's a smart dude. But back
about 275.
Stop.
Well, back in the day, this was a guy I brought up yesterday. Marshall McDougal hit his 6 home runs at Maryland, and I was able to grapple with the fact that it was Gorilla Ball era with the bats and everything. But now that I know it's also 275,
he was over there playing at Gladiator Park.
I'm like, oh man, that hurts my soul a little bit. It's the fraudulent 6 homers. I don't feel good. You just hurt me there, Bruntz.
Sorry, you had to be the bear. Accept that news, but it plays a little bit shorter than what's there. It's downhill.
Hey, so tonight, Brunsy, to change gears for you with hoops, who are you rooting for? Northwestern or Rutgers? Northwestern, right? For Nebraska's sake?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I haven't dug into the NET stuff this morning, but yeah, I mean, I would guess so. I mean, because either way, you're going to have you'd have a road loss.
Yep.
Nebraska still has the ability to win that one at home. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I'm just happy Wisconsin found a way to hold off Ohio State.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a tough question because with Barry out, you kind of don't know what Northwestern's going to be the rest of the way. But yeah, I mean, I guess Northwestern, I'd probably root there.
Yeah, I think Northwestern, if they get a win, they can maybe hop back into that top 50. So your road loss becomes a quad 1 road loss. Rutgers is in the 80s, so they're probably staying about where they are regardless. So I think Northwestern's the play here.
Nebraska's going to be kicking themselves for letting that one get away.
The Rutgers one? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
Like those are the 2 that you're just going to be kicking yourself for at the end of the year.
But at least Minnesota's was overtime, right? That was over like a half. Nebraska had the good first half, the bad second half.
It trickled away. It wasn't.
Rutgers, you had the 2 double-digit stretches where you were seriously inept.
Yeah. Well, I mean, both of those
and
teams,
still could have won Rutgers.
Got them again they're really bad matchups for Nebraska. I mean, like just in terms of kind of what they have at the big spot. I mean, you saw what Rutgers kind of did against Mass, and Minnesota just has, long athletic guys that, I know, people are feeling pretty confident about this last 6-game stretch for Nebraska, but there's some really tough matchups just in terms of personnel that Nebraska's got to deal with, I feel like.
Bruntz, if you were being courted and your wife gave you the green light, would you rather coach basketball in Ann Arbor or Columbus?
Ooh.
Isn't it weird? I gave Ravi some stats over since I've been in high school. So I went back to 1990.
Okay.
And Michigan obviously has a national championship in 89, but surprisingly, Ohio State has won 9 regular season Big Ten championships and 5 tournament championships since 2002. Both those numbers seemed high to me because I've always told myself Ohio State wasn't a great job, but it has been more successful than I thought.
Yeah, even like looking at what Holtman did there, and obviously things.
4 out of 6 years he was in the dance.
I know, and the numbers, especially early on, were pretty good. I don't know. I guess in my little pea brain, I think of Michigan as the better job, and I don't know if it's I'm poisoned by the Fab Five stuff that's stuck with me for so long, but like maybe that.
I mean, Trey Burks was like what, 2013?
Yeah, it was about a little
12?
over 10 years ago.
That was a while ago.
Yeah, the Wagners have been come and gone a while. Yeah, I would still lean Michigan. I think that there's a little bit of a higher ceiling there.
Don't forget about our guys Glenn Rice and Steve Fisher.
So it's just unbelievable, but those guys are pulling up the rear, right? This isn't like Georgetown and DePaul in the Big East, right? I mean,
oh yeah. Well, they haven't finished there since what, like the 60s, like late 60s, since they've been that low in the conference.
So you take who do you think has the more fictitious expectations, Ohio State or Michigan?
I think Ohio State.
Oh.
Ravi talked me off of that. I said Ohio State too, but then he was like, well, the fans don't go. Like they don't support it. So
yeah, I feel like though that becomes a liability, right? If you're and that was one thing I follow a few Ohio State folks on social media, and the lack of people showing up seemed to be another dagger for the Holtman era there. And so I don't know. I mean, I guess I would maybe take the people showing up and a little bit more expectation at Michigan than I would at Ohio State, because I think it kind of scares me when people are kind of indifferent about coming and then all of a sudden they care a lot about how your program's running when they haven't really been there. I don't know. Maybe I'm just justifying things here.
So Bruntz, DB called me out on this a little bit because I think, at least from my perspective, and he's
just
right.
in his feels.
No, he's right that my expectation for what fans do with a losing program is totally skewed by where we live, right?
Yeah,
that's I don't know how big of a deal it is.
Nebraska
that Ohio State's not
Nebraska is rare.
Yeah,
football and basketball, it is rare.
Like I don't know how. Maybe it's not a big deal that Ohio State's not showing up because they're bad and they were bad last year and they haven't been really that good over the last few years. Yeah, they were still making tournaments.
Did you see the crowd at Iowa and Minnesota the other night?
Iowa, Minnesota.
Yes. It's not good.
Not good. No.
Right. So, I think we take that for granted because of Nebraska fans.
So is that even as big of a deal as I'm making it out to be, or is it just, that's how it is everywhere but here?
No, I mean, I think it just, whether or not it matters, it becomes a thing. Like, I just from the Ohio State stuff. I mean, it's like, they're not good. They still what 8,000 the other night. Like that to me is, that's not bad. I mean,
it's not DePaul.
As bad as they've been. Yeah, I mean, it's not drawn.
They lost by 36 last night.
Like I get I follow a team that routinely puts 1,500 fans in a 70,000 seat stadium.
Well, at least contractually, you're obligated to at least one more year of baseball. I don't know where your home's going to be, but at least you have you have to play this year.
Well, they're talking, Damon. There's discussions. Nobody wants them, so they might need to extend the lease a couple of years.
Oh boy. Okay, you may have more than one. And speaking of years, let's hit the trifecta since you're super versatile. UCLA's off the table now with Foster being hired. And speaking of fan base, and boy, the Bruins fans talk about Chip Kelly like he was the Antichrist, and he
wasn't that bad.
He won a little bit.
It was not that bad.
But I guess their infrastructure is a mess. But Bruntz, over under of years Tony White has in Lincoln, and I said it. UCLA's off the board. Syracuse has gone a different direction. I said it at 1.5 years.
That's the right number to set it at.
Over under for Tony White years in Lincoln.
Well, you San Diego State's off the board too.
Yep.
That felt like a big one. I would still say I would take the unders on that.
Are you? Come on, Bruntz. You know that hurts me.
I know.
I told Ravi, I said, the sick thing about coming back is I have to put up with. I'm already emotionally invested in Nebraska. Now it's personal.
Yeah.
You still put it at 1.5 under?
Here's why I would say under.
Okay.
And I'm kind of hedging a little bit because I think that I did not foresee 30 jobs, or I guess 31 now since Georgia State's head coach left in the middle of spring ball. But
it's not funny.
It's a little funny.
I think
it's his delivery.
I think there's always jobs that open that you kind of don't foresee, but I would expect that next year would probably be a slow hiring cycle, which I'm probably wrong to think that because it always seems to be a little bit better, a little bit more active than what you expect. But he feels like he's at the front of the line now for whatever job comes open, and especially if it's at any MAC job,
But he is very particular. That's a good thing, right?
Choosy. Yeah, that's the good part.
That's true. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, if the one thing that I could say where I think you could be comfortable saying the overs is that, I think he's going to be at a point at a coordinator, if Nebraska's defense is as good as we think they're going to be, that, there might be some of those, starter jobs or what are seen as starter head coaching jobs that might actually be a little bit below him at this point.
Yeah, I think I don't think he's taking just a job to take a job, right?
No, I don't think so either. I'm my reason for saying taking the under now is just because
the volatility of the market.
Yes.
I will say it is a plus for the over that San Diego State, Arizona State, UCLA, and Syracuse have all hired coaches within the last 14 months.
Yes.
So that's the best sign for the over.
Yes. Yes. So
I went from not liking Ravi this morning and being Team Bruntz, and I might be back to Ravi, man. I need over a year and a half.
Why is that, DB? Why didn't you?
I don't know. I like good defense.
We're past the stray defensive coordinator job becoming open now.
We're
okay then.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
Bruntz, you're amazing, man. Appreciate it.
Yep. We'll see you guys.
Great stuff as always from Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Coming up next, we're gonna get to a bunch of stuff that we haven't got to yet.
How about how we just stretched him pillar to post? We started out with childcare and parenting to
basketball,
Vegas
baseball,
totals,
football, the whole thing. And we got a little money ball in there as well. We got more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. Want to remind you that the 11th annual Team Jack Gala presented by Fat Brain Toys is coming up on February 24th in Lincoln. There are a ton of great auction items up for bids, so make sure you go to teamjackfoundation.org to participate. at teamjackfoundation.org. You can learn all about all their events they've got going on, or if you just want to donate directly to the cause, you can do that as well. That's teamjackfoundation.org. All right, DB, before we get into Hurrdat Hot Seat, and maybe this is probably the most hot seedy thing we're going to talk about today.
Coach Wilkes?
No.
Which, by the way,
we can get to that, but I wanted to get to the incident at the Kansas City Chiefs parade yesterday because it hit a pretty close to home, obviously geographically, right? But also Hurrdat had a presence down there. Everybody was okay. I know some people asked about that. Nobody, in terms of our team, everybody was okay. But it was, it's hard to still be surprised by these things, but I was a little bit. We hadn't seen this when it happens in a place that it hasn't happened at yet. It kind of erodes a little bit of that. I don't know if sense of safety is the right thing, but the first time it happened at a movie theater, we're like, oh gosh, or the first time it happened at a grocery store, you're like, oh gosh, that's not, or it happened at a concert in Las Vegas, right? It weirdly, and this sounds terrible, but we've almost become a little numb to the schools because it's happened there so often. But when it happens somewhere new, it kind of shakes us a little bit more. And that's sort of how I felt yesterday with the parade.
Bad guy taker, no. That my man T-Mac was, and this is probably like 3:00. I got to go back and look. And he goes, are you paying attention to what's happening in KC? And I said, no. What? Right?
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to go get Zobear, right? So then he tells me, and my gut reaction was surprised this hasn't happened before.
Yeah.
Like that was true serum. Like the very first thing that I thought was almost what took so long. That kind of made me sad. But I go back and I watch, because for me, I'm not afraid isn't really the word. I would be very reluctant to be around that many people anyway, ever.
And there's no way, because I think the number was there's 800 police officers and there's a million.
So
people
when
there,
she said that when the lieutenant said that in the presser, she said we had over 800 law enforcement present, our agency, different agencies. I was like, yeah, the checkpoints have to be, pretty on point, but how could you, for lack of a better term, how could you police it?
You can't, not with that many people,
right?
In a much different sense, it's the same thing. People are like, oh, you have to stop court stormings, right? You've got 20 police officers, maybe 20 ushers, whatever, and 20,000 people. There is no practical way to do that with just the presence on the ground, right?
Yep.
The numbers don't work out. So, and listen, this is one of those things. I'm not going to pretend like I have a good answer here, right? Because I don't. What I do know is that the fact that your first reaction was, oh, surprised this hasn't happened yet, that's a huge part of the problem.
Yeah, I get it.
And I'm not putting that on you. I'm just saying, because I thought it too at some point, because with that many people, you just are like, yeah, kind of makes sense.
But my thing though, and this may sound crazy because I haven't been through, have I been through a traumatic experience in public where I feared for my safety? Yes. So I'll say this. Yes, actually. Okay. I don't know if I would be good at living in fear though. I think I'm the type of person that would say to myself, and I know people have called me reckless, especially in my family. That's just reckless. You have people you need to care about, because I would be more inclined to say whatever's
gonna happen.
Whatever's supposed to happen will happen.
That's how my dad is.
That's kind of how I am. So I'm not sure I would live in fear, but I could imagine there being some unbelievable fallout
But I think 9 of the 22 injuries were between 6 and 15 years old. For those people, it is going to be a super traumatic event, right? Because they're in a very impressionable part of their life, and it's going to be a kind of core foundational event for them, most likely.
Let me ask you something. Is motive important to you going forward in the grand scheme of things? Like, let's say, for instance, they would say to you, I just wanted to, and then fill in the blank. Would that change the way that you thought about the experience as a whole?
You mean the suspects?
Yes.
Not really.
Okay.
Because they're too prevalent, right? These events are too prevalent that.
And you figure it'll just be the next person with the next motive?
Yeah, right. Like if you want to do this,
I don't know.
If this is something that like, you're sort of like on the edge of, I guess. This sounds terrible, but you'll almost find a reason to do that thing, right? If it's something that is in your head that you've sort of decided on, you'll find a rationale for it. And that's whether that's something as dramatic as what we're talking about now with, committing this atrocity, or if it's, I want to spend this amount of money on something like in a normal person's life where you're like, yeah, you'll find a reason to do it.
Okay. So we've seen Vegas. We've seen Astro World.
Yeah.
With Travis Scott.
Yep.
It's country music in Vegas, right?
Yeah, I believe it was a country concert.
So we've seen the outside venues.
Well, and this is different, but it wasn't a shooting, but the Boston Marathon thing as well. Sort of this
outside, yeah.
Sort of reminded me of that almost more than some of the other like active shooter situations.
Is there something about the American way that says don't be deterred? Or is now the time where we feel like we should be smarter or at least more cognizant about potential dangers? Because there's something about America that permeates the thought process of you cannot live in fear.
Yeah, I don't know that that's uniquely American because, you if you want to go all the way back and break out your history books of, I think there's this really good section from Malcolm Gladwell in one of his books about.
What do you know about my man MG?
Oh yeah, I'm obsessed.
Okay.
But he's talking about the bombings of London during World War II, right? And
I was going to ask you something about stoicism, kind of your person. Never mind. That's way different. Okay.
But so I don't know that it's uniquely American because he talks a lot about how the people in England at the time just kept pressing forward. You see it a lot in other countries where there's a lot more social upheaval on a regular basis in terms of political violence and stuff like that, where you just have to keep going because what's your other option, right? And yes, you would like to think that there's ways that, there should be ways to protect your kids at school, right? Like that we protect our kids at school. There should be ways to go to a concert safely. But in terms of being a person in just you're not in a public office or an elected official or anything like that, where you can actually make policy changes or anything like that. You're just a guy that's trying to go to work or trying to go to a movie or whatever. What other choice do you have but to keep going?
Yeah.
That's kind of where, so I don't know if it's uniquely American, but I think it's uniquely like a human thing of, well, I'm still here. I have to keep living my life.
A certain amount of fortitude that everybody kind of exudes relative to their situations, right? Whether you're in
like Bosnia in the 90s or
Ukraine or
England.
Afghanistan. I got you.
Yeah.
But we enjoy our
big events. We like our big events.
It just seems, and maybe it's because it's relative to me, it just seems like we enjoy our freedoms here more because it's what we get to do. It's kind of like how we feel about free speech or right to bear arms.
Sure.
It's we've earned the right to deal with the consequences of or the byproduct of what we fought for.
You have to ask the question though, at what point does the byproduct make us less free?
I don't know if this will be it. It's still fresh.
Yeah. And I don't think this is a tipping point necessarily. It's just at some point that question has to be answered.
What's the next championship? The NBA?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That'll be the next parade.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Really, we will.
Right.
We will get to some Hurrdat hot seat coming up next, but wanted to make sure we address that here on the show. We will wrap up the show with Hurrdat hot seat here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up the show here on a Thursday on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi Lulla, ODB here with me as well, and it is time for the Hurrdat hot seat. DB, I want to go back to what we were talking about early in the show.
Okay.
Greg McDermott.
Oh.
Give me odds
on
whether or not he is the coach at Creighton next
Oh,
year.
man, really?
Yep, we're doing this. And then I have a follow-up.
Oh. I say 65-35 not.
Oh, okay. Okay. That caught me off guard.
Why?
I thought the lean would have been a slight lean towards stay.
No.
You think it's a decent lean to go?
The only reason I say that is because I don't think he wants to bluff. I don't think he wants unnecessary distractions. I don't think he's the type of guy that when you're in the middle of a Big East Conference run would invite this and have it be for attention.
Fair.
That's it.
Fair.
Like that no more, no less.
That's fair. I think the interest is real. I think the smoke is real. I probably would have put it 60-40 stay.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think there's a real chance that he is not the coach next year, based on kind of what we talked about in the first segment. If you missed it, go back on the podcast, listen to that first hour. We talked a lot about the scenario. My second question, follow up here, and then I'll let you go. Who is, in your mind, the most likely candidate to replace him?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Probably a former assistant, because I think he cares about the university. This is very, very deep for something that may not happen.
It is.
But at first blush, I think he cares enough about the university because I think he would have liked to handpick his successor if it would have been all hunky-dory anyway.
Yep.
But, I mean, maybe out of whatever shakes out, it wouldn't happen. Like, he wouldn't have that opportunity. But I don't know, maybe a previous.
So I've got a few names.
By the way, is that the ultimate legacy right there? I mean, besides winning like a national championship, picking your own successor.
It's not something very many people get to do.
Yeah.
I've got a few names for you. Tell me how you feel about these.
Okay.
D-Rock over at Drake. Out there, only been a head coach for 1 year, but doing really, really well so far, and has the most Creighton ties, Al Huss. Played at Creighton.
That was his guy. Played
at Creighton, obviously assistant coach at Creighton, and now doing very well at High Point, right?
Yeah.
He's having a really nice first year at High Point.
My guess is as that's who he would have.
If he had stayed here, I think that's who Mac would have picked.
Shane, you're just going to have to deal with the tapping on my mug.
All right, another guy here.
Is that your Yeti?
Yeah. Yeah.
A guy that has more of a mixed bag in terms of results, but I think people think he's a good coach still.
Who's that?
Porter Moser.
Yeah. But I don't know if that would get. I don't know if that moves the. I can't even do it. I got to put it back down. It's man. But anyway, I'm trying to dial in.
I think so. Porter Moser's got major head coaching experience with Oklahoma. They were okay.
Can I just say this? I can't drink out of my right hand because
of the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the left hand, you tap the ring on it.
Yeah, and I know.
I don't know.
It's got
Porter Moser's an interesting guy.
Why though?
I mean, he's obviously got a long track record as a head coach. He's made that deep Final Four run, and then I think they made an Elite Eight as well at Loyola. So he's got track record of NCAA success, or it was a Sweet 16.
The move though. But I get it, the coming home, the allure.
Yeah,
I am always reluctant to talk about jobs that haven't come open or that aren't open.
I think it's different when you're not talking about firing a guy. Like we're not talking about like, oh, Coach Mack's going to get fired, right?
Yeah.
I think it's different when it's, oh, he may move on. To me, at least, I don't know. In my head, it's a totally different thing.
So with all this circulating and swirling, right, since probably yesterday morning, when does it hit media?
I think it's got to be soon, right?
You'd think.
I would think that the
Thursday?
next thing Chattel writes would be about this.
And we both think that it'll be Chattel.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of got he's a voice that people listen to. B, he's sort of got the gravitas and the respect from Coach Mack and the program that he's not going to get in trouble in terms of access or something.
And he wrote something a couple of years ago, too.
Yeah. Like he's not going to get in trouble for speculating about something that, let's say, the beat writer for Creighton or from the World Herald for Creighton would.
Yeah.
Whether it's Niatawa, whether it's Lorenzi, whether it's Walker, like Mac doesn't seem to necessarily extend those guys the same courtesies that he does Chattel. I think Chattel's got the juice to be able to say something and write something without it affecting the way he does his job or his access to the program or anything like that. So I would guess by this weekend, unless Coach Mack says something before that in terms of, oh, I'm not going anywhere, whatever.
Because they tipped tomorrow night, right?
Yeah, tomorrow. What?
Tomorrow's Friday. They're at it's Butler's. Is Butler Friday tomorrow?
Is it a Friday or a Saturday? The Friday games are weird, and I don't like it.
I don't like the couple of random Big Ten games on Friday night either. I just told that to Aaron the other day when we were trying to decide with wrestling and basketball. And
No, it's Saturday. It's a Saturday morning.
Okay, so it's the 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So probably
like tomorrow, maybe.
Tomorrow, maybe
would make sense. Would make the most sense. Couple days, like tomorrow sort of makes sense if it's going to drop in mainstream.
So if he and Cooley are very,
that's
very close.
The other part of this equation.
But
there was an ominous quote there.
It was, and it was kind of unsolicited, but maybe he was looking out for Mac. It could have been reflectionary just because people are less appreciative of what's going on.
Do you think
from
he's
Providence
projecting it all?
Maybe.
Is that where you were going?
Yeah.
Because maybe he didn't feel appreciated enough at Providence.
100%.
And so he left.
100%.
Maybe he's projecting a little bit onto Mac. I can see that.
And at the end of the day, maybe there wasn't any, just hypothetically.
Yeah.
And I'm dead serious. Maybe it was like, hey, I hope you guys know, because he and Coach Mack talk about things all the time on like a deeper friendship level, right? I mean, this is the same guy that confided in Coach Mack before Georgetown.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe they just talk, or maybe they talk about like NIL or coaching deals or the difference from this job to that job. And I mean, maybe it was just on his mind, but he does have a unique perspective, so you can't really gloss over that either.
No, absolutely. I mean, not just a unique perspective career-wise, but his relationship with Mac. And, it almost makes me wonder if he is projecting, if you're right there, that maybe he wanted to stay at Providence and they couldn't do what it took to make that deal. You know what I mean? Because I do think
it seemed like Cooley was getting like IOUs from Providence, like on his pay, and he has more money than he probably knows what to do with it. Georgetown, what did he say to the fan a couple of weeks ago? He's like, I'm ready. I mean, he pulled a Chappelle to the fan base, right?
Like the Rick James.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's, I think Creighton will have an opportunity to keep Coach Mack. I do think he's going to make them work for it. That's why I did 60-40 lean to stay, because I do think there is, like, if Ohio State comes with a number, I don't think Creighton's going to match that number, but it's like, hey, show me that you care. Show me that you still want me here. Show me I'm still celebrated, not tolerated, right?
Yeah.
That I think is, like, whether it's in dollars on the contract, whether it's on years, whether it's in, hey, here's a resource you wanted that you didn't have before, whether it's like, hey, we're going to step up the NIL collective, whatever. I think Creighton's got some work to do to keep him, but I think they can keep him.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. That's for darn sure.
Interesting stuff. We'll see if our buddy Tom Chattel drops anything tomorrow. Because I do think if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be him. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Shane Schillerberg producing for us. We will be back tomorrow.
Kinda producing over here.
I mean, you're doing
I'm
something.
cutting the audio out.
Yeah.
You're doing something, that's for sure. We'll be back tomorrow on Hurrdat Sports Radio.